We remember Arthur and join our hearts together to give comfort and strength to his family. Mourning is a time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet, and with Arthur, funny. We begin our service with a recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Arthur's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. May I in Yavo Ezri, Madonai, O say Shamayim Varetz, Hayitin Lamot Raglecha, Hayanum Shabrecha, Hine lo Yanum Shomer Yisrael. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. Please join me in Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our rabbis taught that there are three crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasize that the crown of a good name excels them all. Wealth, health, even life passes away, but a good name and lives forever. It is this view that the Talmud teaches. Monuments need not be erected for the righteous. Their deeds are their memorials. They will be remembered and revered for the kindness they have shown and for the love they have given. They are shining examples of what it means to be a mensch. Oh, what a mensch. We all have many, many Arthur stories. I met him the very first time for the very first kosher-style luncheon. Maybe not it wasn't the first time, but it was my first kosher-style luncheon. And he said we had to be in the kitchen at 4:30 a.m. And I thought, well, I'm not going to get to the kitchen at 4:30 a.m. I live in Pacific Grove. So I showed up at 5, and Arthur was standing right there in the kitchen, and he goes, "Why are you so late?" And I thought he was serious. You can tell I didn't know him very well. I'm now going to yield the bima to those that know him very well. And we're going to start with Rhonda, Arthur's daughter, followed by Joy, his grandsons, his granddaughter, and Jeff.
I'm going to try. My father was a giant. To me, he was the tallest, smartest, kindest, and all-around best father. He will always be my hero. I know he's saying, "Rhonda, don't talk too long and don't cry. You'll make a fool of yourself and nobody cares." But since it's about me, it's okay, and everybody cares. My father was proud of his family. He loved us all. He would often ask me, "Rhonda, who do you know who is as old as you and still has a mother and father?" He told me he wouldn't always be here, but he would always be watching. I know that's true. And for that, I know he's always near me and our family. My father loved girls. After Sammy was born, and Joy and Jeffrey each had sons, and then Ben was born, my father said, "Rhonda, do it till you get it right." When Mimi was born, he told me, "Okay, no more children. It's too hard for me when you're always sick and you're not nice to me when I come see you in the hospital." My father smoked, and I said, "Okay, I won't have any more babies, but you have to stop smoking." He thought for a minute, and he said, "Okay, I'm gonna wait till you're 50, and I'm gonna smoke 2 cigarettes at the same time, and you can't have any more babies." Said, "Okay." I love to send cards. He said Hallmark was my favorite store. So my father would get the card, he would tear open the envelope, he would turn it over and look at the price and say, "I can't believe you spent $4.65 on this card." So he would cross off "Dear Dad" and write back to me for Valentine's, birthday, anything. He said, "Why would you waste the money? You have to, be smart about it." So he would send it back. I would get my own cards. My father was proud of me, and I always knew it. He did like to tease. When I was a high school vice principal, he would say, "Rhonda, what am I supposed to say to my friend? She's a vice principal. Who's the principal?" When I was an assistant superintendent, he would say, "Rhonda, what am I supposed to say?" When I became superintendent, he said, "What should I tell my friends? You're not the governor." We always had something funny. My father loved his grandchildren. When Sammy was calling high school football and college basketball games, he always said, "You'll see, he's going to make it big." And now, he's so proud. Sammy is the NBA radio broadcaster for the Charlotte Hornets. His grandpa was right. and loved listening to the games. He especially loved Sammy's closing, thanking everyone for listening with his byline, "It's a pleasure and a privilege." My father visited Mimi in her kindergarten classroom. He was so impressed that she could be reading to the class, and there was a boy, David, and he was misbehaving. And Mimi was reading a story, and she would say, "David, sit down and turn around." He said she never missed a beat. My father loved Mimi. She has many videos of him telling her stories and singing to her. She was definitely his special girl. When Ben graduated from medical school, my father was so impressed that Ben knew the subway routes. He could navigate the busy cities of New York and Washington, D.C. When Ben finished his training as a surgeon and then specialized as a pediatric surgeon, my father said, "I guess it's okay since he couldn't be a plumber." These are just a few stories. We all have many more to make us laugh. My father leaves my mother, Leah, the love of his life, for 72 years, a brother-in-law, my Uncle Michael, his wife Donna, 3 children, 7 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and many great-nieces and nephews. He loved us all, and we all loved him. I'll close with an old proverb that says, "We die once when the last breath leaves our body." And I was with him, my mother was with him, my brother and sister, we were with him to the end. We die a second time when the last person speaks our name. The first death is beyond our control, but the second one we can strive to prevent. I know we will all talk and laugh about my father, and he will be with us forever.
A few months ago, I went to visit at his house to have lunch with him, and it was a time when his health was failing, and I wanted him to know what a good father he had been, and I told him he was a very lucky man to have lived as long as he had, and had so many good things happen to him. And he agreed that he had a long, happy life, and he was very happy for the rest of us that have so much more to look forward to in our lives. And he knew that we had a great future ahead of us. He played many roles in his life. Started out when he was born, he was a son, and he was also a younger brother to his 3 sisters, Shirley, Ruthie, and Sylvia. He grew up, went to high school, met Leah, knew Leah, but hadn't dated her yet until they actually went on a double date. He was with some other girl. She was with some guy, which he later called the monkey. And I guess so they went to a dance, and I guess it turned out real well for them, and they started dating after that. So they were in high school, going steady, and Art made a big mistake. He told Leah that he wanted to hang out with his high school buddies more, so they broke up. Art knew that was a really bad move. He was missing Leah a lot, and he had to find a good way to get back in her good graces, and get her back again. So the perfect opportunity arose when Shirley had a baby. And he asked Leah if she wanted to go with him to see the baby. And of course, my mom, she loves her babies. She couldn't say no, so she went with them to visit Shirley and the baby, and they were back together again after that. That baby happened to be Steve, but I don't think he's here today, is he? He is here? No? Okay. Anyway, they went through high school. They got married at the end of high school. So Art was now a husband. And he was also a father-in-law, a brother-in-law, an uncle. He invented the pain finger for the cousins when they were wrestling. And then he was a father himself. He had 3 exceptional children. And his father was his best role. He was a great father. He was a good man. And he got to be a grandfather and a great-grandfather. As long as I can remember, there's a photo of him on his honeymoon. It's been on their dresser and was taken in Florida. So he had his trunks on, and he had an exceptional body. He was very, very good physique. I called that the before picture. A few months ago, I went to visit him. He was getting dressed. He was sitting on the bed, same room the before picture is in. Sitting on the bed, skinny legs, skinny arms, big belly, everything sagging. I thought he looked kind of cute, so I asked him if I could take his picture. He said no. I said, come on, Howard, let me take your picture. He said, okay, but he had to give me his tough guy look first. So I took the picture, and that's the after picture. Those 2 photos are 72 years apart. It's amazing what can happen to a body in 72 years. The only ones that have seen those photos, the before and after, were Art and Leah. Every time I showed it to them, they cracked up laughing. I brought those photos today because I had asked Art if it's okay to show them at his funeral. And to my surprise, he said sure. So I brought them today. Everybody knows that Art liked to make you laugh and smile. And hopefully when you come up and take a look at the photos after the service, you'll have your last laugh and smile along with Art.
Sam, Arthur's grandson, will speak.
Mom stole my line. I'm sure my grandfather, if you saw him, he loved to brag about all of us. And he probably said that I was the sports broadcaster who stutters. And Ben is the surgeon who shakes hands like this. And Mimi's perfect. And every time I saw him, he'd brag about all my cousins. He was my hero. He moved across the country when he was in his 30s and did everything for his family. And was just a great example for everything I wanted to be in life. And what was really important. And he lived just this great big life where he loved all the little things. So all my great memories of him are all around simple things like Werner's ginger ale or backgammon or watching tennis or him singing and definitely him laughing. He gave us a lot of gifts, but the best one is this room. He would have loved this room and this family. In the last few days, as people in my new neighborhood in Charlotte and around my work found out what happened, they'd come up and express condolences, and then they'd ask, were you close? And I never thought to ask that question to anyone, because why wouldn't you be close? Why wouldn't you be close to him? Why wouldn't you call your aunt and uncle for advice? Why wouldn't you want to be with your cousins all the time? Why wouldn't you have a family event that starts with 50 people in your family that are automatically invited, and maybe ask your wife if she wants to have anyone come too? And so, not knowing how special that was is a gift. And he loved being a grandfather and a great-grandfather, and like Joyce said, he loved knowing that there was going to be more. And so now it's for all of us to keep it going, because some of his favorite events were holding court at winter cousins get-togethers and having everyone come up and kiss the ring and pay respects. He had 5 great-grandkids, and he knew more to come, and a couple are already named after him. And we all hope that our kids retain part of him, especially the sense of humor, maybe not the hair. And my son, Harrison, is named after him. He's Little Avram, and Grandpa was Big Avram. But I taught him when he was little, because Grandpa loved Yiddish, to call him Altakaker. Because for someone with his sense of humor, I don't think there was anything funnier than watching a little 3-year-old boy run up to him and say, Altakaker, Altakaker. Or now having my daughter FaceTime him and say, Altakaker, Altakaker. And my son, after we found out, told him what happened, took him to school. He goes to school at the JCC, and I told his teachers what happened in case, he's 5 and didn't know how he would react and wanted them to know. And he came home and he said, Altakaker's with Hashem, and Hashem is everywhere. And love you, Grandpa.
Ben?
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's hard to try and limit what to say about such a great man and a special person to me and to all of us. My grandpa was one of my biggest supporters and one of my biggest heroes, and he taught me to work hard and to have a great sense of humor. And he was one of the funniest people I knew. He had a joke for everyone and everything. I remember his 50th wedding anniversary. He stood up to give a great speech, and of course, he couldn't pass on the opportunity to make fun of his oldest sister, my Aunt Ruthie. And she traveled halfway across the country to be there, and he started to give this really grand speech about how happy he was that everyone could be there to celebrate with him and my grandma. And then he turned to my Aunt Ruthie and he said, I'm so happy that Ruthie's here. We're so proud of her. She just finished her first book in her 80s, and she'll start reading her second book next year. So he was quite the joker. He went to Restoration Hardware and would buy extendable forks on the end of old radio antennas, and he'd walk through a restaurant and eat off of people's plates. And we thought someday someone's not going to find that funny, but that never came. He could always pull it off. And he was one of the smartest men I knew. He would tell me all about the physics of plumbing on the fly, and I did a different type of plumbing, but he always made that known. He taught me a few tricks that I still carry with me today. One time after we had moved into a new house in San Jose, I went to Home Depot with him, and he wanted to buy a floodlight to put under the sink so he could work. And so he bought a few parts, a light cord, a socket, and a light shade for the light. And then he assembled the whole thing in the store, and when we went to the checkout, they only charged us for the light shade, which was about $1. And so we walked out of there with like $30 worth of merchandise, and I said, shouldn't we pay for that? And he said, no, I'm old. They can't do anything to me. So he taught us all valuable lessons growing up. He taught us to have a sense of humor, to be responsible, to give back to our communities, and to work hard and prepare for things. And to solidify preparing for things, one summer while we were all growing up, he felt it was time to teach all the grandkids how to gamble. So right before my bar mitzvah, my grandpa sat us all down in Lake Tahoe, and he taught us how to play blackjack and pai-gow poker, and made sure we knew how to bet and play against the house, so that when we were all 21, we could enjoy Las Vegas. He was a really sharp card player. We went on an Alaska cruise. He sat down in the pit and learned a few games just sitting there. And so even in my last conversation I had with him, he was still joking around in the hospital. And he said, "Ben, make sure you find a good nurse who can come home and cook and clean for you." So it's hard to believe he's gone. I'm sad I won't be able to hear one more of his funny jokes. I'll miss him forever, but I'm really thankful for all the time we had together.
Thank you all for being here. My grandpa would say, "Thank you for coming to my party." It's hard to pick out what stories to share about my grandpa. He was an incredible role model and patriarch of our family. He was hilarious, an amazing storyteller, and he gave the best advice. I would always tell him how cute he was, and he would say, "I'm not cute, I'm handsome." My grandpa is one of the smartest people I know. He taught me to work hard, find the humor in everything, and not take any lip from anyone. This advice has come into play countless times throughout my life. I've been a teacher for more than 10 years now. My grandpa always said teaching is such a noble profession, and he was so proud. When I first started, I taught kindergarten, and my grandparents wanted to come visit me in my classroom. So they came, and my grandpa would often share memories of when he was in kindergarten. He said they practiced skipping and marching, and had milk and cookies, and nap time. And he asked me when nap time was going to be, because he wanted to participate. I told him we don't have nap time anymore in kindergarten. And it's been gone for a long time. So he said Grandma needed to take him home because he needed to take a nap. He was tired from watching me run around the room so much. If you saw my grandpa and I together, you probably saw us holding hands. And it was one of the best perks of being the granddaughter. My grandpa would squeeze my hand very tight. He was so strong. I was fortunate to spend the night with him in the hospital. We stayed up all night. He told me jokes and sang to me. And around 4 a.m., he really wanted to go home. He was laying on his side, facing me, and I was in the pull-out chair facing him. And he reached over the rail of the bed, and he wrapped his pointed finger on the armrest of my chair. And then he got a second finger, and then his whole hand. And he pulled me all the way to his bed. He said, "Mimi, let's get out of here." We got to take him home the next morning, just like he wanted. My grandpa and grandma have always been there to support me and my cousins and all my family through every milestone and achievements in our lives. Grandpa, thank you for always making me smile and laugh, and for a lifetime of incredible memories. You'll always be with us. And a quote from a song he'd always sing to me, "Grandpa, I love you, Yes, I do. I love you.
Now Jeffrey will speak.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. This is not a book of notes, but I do have a letter from the Juilliard School inspired by my great father. It's in here somewhere. I hope I still have it. The speeches were beautiful, everybody. There's not a whole lot more to say. So I'll talk a little bit about myself, my relation. All he ever wanted from me was to have me move to New York and play the bassoon. The main word being play. I enjoyed every day. It was a party every night. When I'd come home from New York, I'd go around town with him. He'd introduce me to people. This is Jeffrey, my son. He's a musician from New York. He was so proud. He always had my back. And when I'd struggle, the first few years being in New York, it took a while to establish myself. And he told me, everybody should be poor at some point in their life. Didn't seem so good at the time. To take off my glasses. He asked me about my earliest memories. And some of them were the same as his, except for the fact he lived through the Depression and hard times, and I had an easy life, which he made sure of. But some of our memories were the same. My earliest memories were going in the car, visiting relatives, going there. Rhonda would go out to be with the older kids, and Joy would hold my hand, the same as my Aunt Shirley did to him. She'd bring me in, make sure I was safe, I was situated, I was fine before she thought anything of herself. His greatness was how he touched everybody here. And more importantly than that, the way he touched his grandchildren, my nieces and nephews, and the memories that he'll have from that. We'll all have from that. My relationship with my grandfather was funny. He would tell great stories. He'd talk about his dog Muddle, who lived in the garage. Whenever we would get there, he'd be watering his lemon tree. He'd talk about his neighbor, who he had a feud with, the worm. And he'd go to my baseball games, my Little League games, and he'd sit there, this 4', 11" guy with the Cowboys and Salinas and their boots, and say, "Give it a Zets, Jeffrey, give it a Zets." So in one generation, the superficial, although loving relationship I had with my grandfather was turned around into these great testimonials that you've heard from his grandkids. I have no doubt if Nate, Nolan, and my kids were up here, they would have many more stories. There was one time when my son Evan came home from college, and that's maybe 20 at a time when you've been away. I remember me feeling like that. You're away, you knew everything, you met new people, and he came home and spent a lot of time with my father and said, in his own inimitable way, "Grandpa speaks intelligently on almost any subject you could bring up." He was so smart. He called my other son Ross, Rossman. They were laughing hysterically from the second he saw him. He always told Rossman he could beat him up. The last few days were very uplifting for me. Like Mimi, I got to spend some time in the hospital with them. We talked about our families, our similarities of growing up, of our older sisters taking care of us, of our mothers holding us, Although for both of us, that could have been when we were 9 or 10, because they were pretty strong, so probably not an early memory. Our family was united in ways that I could only imagine. I was there with my sisters, my wonderful, great sisters, and my mom, who's the most special person alive. And it just felt like we were all feeling the same memories, the same things inside, and we were all with them. It was very special. Finally, Mom, you're the strongest person I know. You've done it all. You've been with them, taken care of them for 10 years. I've heard people say things like, no one at your age could do what you've done. And I want to tell you, nobody at any age could do what you've done the last 10 years. One of the kindest and smartest people I know told me that it's a sign of strength to ask for help. And I hope after all you've done for us, you'll give us the gift of being able to help you. Now, the letter inspired by my father, most of you will get it. Some of you won't. I got into Juilliard in 1974, went to stay with my cousin Gerald in New Jersey, not the nicest place. I'm not sure why he lived there. Gerald was studying and I was practicing. I went off to take my audition. I found out I got in, and then I was waiting and waiting to hear about my scholarship and how life would be in New York. And I received a letter. I don't have a handwritten letter. I don't have the envelope, but it had a drawing of Lincoln Center, the Juilliard School logo, and just a little bit of explanation before I read it. My bassoon teacher was Mr. Goltzer. I had a teacher in San Francisco who used to scream at me. He'd hold a shoe over my head and say, "Get it right." And one other thing you must know, I'll have to check. That's about it. Here's the letter. Dear Mr. Winter, on behalf of the staff, Mr. Goltzer, and the Scholarship Committee, I'm very pleased to inform you that you have been awarded one of our better scholarships. It is called our Alexander Hamilton Award. Frankly, Mr. Winter, you can't play for shit. If it were not for your famous father having made a large donation to Juilliard, you would have gone to the Hartnell Conservatory and studied with that hippie Hal Noneman. This scholarship will cover your living expenses for 1 hour in New York. Give my best regards to your father and tell him to keep up the good work. The world of art and music needs and loves him. As for you, shithead, oh, the one thing I forgot, I had long hair in high school, and he always wanted me to have short hair. It's the only thing we ever fought about. As for you, shithead, I understand you excelled in being screamed at. I am anxiously looking forward to screaming at the dumb hick with the short hair. I'll see you this fall when you make a fool of yourself in front of the entire school. Sincerely, Peter Menon, President, the Juilliard School, Lincoln Center, New York. We'll miss him. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Arthur, this one's for you. Shane V. de Lavona. Like the moon above you, the stars remind me of you. The angels knew I love you, so heaven sent you to us. Der Moich ist mir zu mischt, ich geh arum zu Kist, kweis allein nicht, was ich will. Herzen auf Quartier, tragt wie zu sagen dir, als du bist, schön wie die Wonne, liegt dich wie die Sterne von Himmel am Matone, bist du mir zugeschickt, mein Glück ob ich gewinnen, wenn ich ob dich gefinnen, scheint wie tausend Sinnen, hast mein Herz beglicht. Deine zähnlich weiße Perlich mit deiner schönen Augen, deine Kleiderlich, deine herrlich, hast mich zugezeugen, schön wie die Wonne, lichtig wie die Sterne von Himmel am Matone, bist du mir zugeschickt. Deine zähnlich weiße Perlich mit deiner schönen Augen, deine Kleiderlich, deine herrlich, musst mich zugezeugen, schön wie die Wonne, lichtig wie die Sterne von Himmel am Matone, bist du mir zugeschickt.
Cantor didn't know I was going to do this, but I do want to say just a couple words. I want to thank everyone for being here. And I read once that love isn't love until you give it away. And Arthur had love for everyone in this room in many, many different ways, but lots of love for everyone. I have the same. I love you all, and thank you all for being here.
Our service will conclude with the mourner's Kaddish. At that time, we will ask for you to please let the family exit first from the sanctuary. The burial service at the Garden of Memories is a private service for the family and immediate family, but you are all invited to come to the second night of Shiva, which will be Tuesday night, tomorrow night, here at the temple at 7 p.m., and Leah insists that we will have cake and hot coffee. Arthur loved his sweets. That's right. Into your care we entrust the spirit of Arthur, for you keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, God, are with us, a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our life, our hope in eternity. Please rise. Shochein bamromim, hamtzi minucha nechana, tachet kanfei hashachina, im giroshim utarim, kezor arakiam mazirim, en nishma Lebish ben Shimon v'Hadassah, shelacha le'olamo, ba'al harachamim yastireu, b'seter kanafav le'olamim, vayitror b'tror ha'chayim, et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, ve'anuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our dearest Arthur, who has entered eternity. Let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please join me in the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'almad yivrach chiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon v'yomechon, u'v'chayeh l'chol beit Yisrael, b'hagala u'izman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam l'almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudashah, brichu. La'ela min kol, birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen ve'amen.